If you listen to the show, you already know that we cannot exist without our sponsors. They are the ones who make things happen behind the scenes. So let's acknowledge Fuji Sports. We've been working with these guys for a while now, not only as far as this podcast is concerned, but also at the RŌL Academy. We've had their gear. I personally use their gis. What a phenomenal product.
Yeah, I mean, Jiu Jitsu, Judo, MMA, tape, bags, anything you need for your Jiu Jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Let's talk RŌL TV. There's so much content on there. It's ridiculous at this point. But I think what is even more intriguing, as time went on during the project, we've been recording most of the events that were taking place here at RŌL Academy. At this point, I mean, we have guys like Chris Howder, Armin Fati, Rafael Lovato Sr., and Pete the Greek. I mean, there are so many different events that we've kind of recorded it. Don't you think that's amazing? I mean, points of reflection and kind of going back for all the students to see what really happened and refresh their memory.
Yeah, I think it's great, you know, being able to go back and look at all these high-level practitioners, Octavio Cudo, like one of the names you didn't mention. And I mean, just these guys that have been doing this for so long come in, teach these amazing seminars and workshops, and it's all recorded and there for you to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get additional savings on all this, type in code RŌL Radio at the coupon and get additional 30% off of your membership.
Nice. Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you've come to expect. We all know we suck at jiu-jitsu when we first start, and today's guest wants us to keep that mindset throughout our jiu-jitsu journey. Josh McKinney is on a quest to suck less at jiu-jitsu, and he shares his philosophy on why thinking we are good can hold us back, how and why he became hooked on jiu-jitsu, why he feels an academy owner should teach classes, and a ton more. Here's the RŌL Radio with the owner and instructor of HeahNodHQ Jiu-Jitsu, 16-time IBJJF gold medalist, Kyle Watson black belt, and host of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, Josh McKinney.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
Yes.
How are you? And
good.
we are live.
There we go. Yeah, I'm good. So, what's up?
We barely not recorded this.
We barely not recorded.
Yeah, because the one cable that I have.
Grammar is that?
I'm 4.
Yeah, well, whew.
You know, it's funny because like we've made these improvements. You know, we got some cool stuff going on here, and it's easier to operate. There's no 50 billion cables going.
You made it too easy.
Yeah, and now it's the one cable, and I forgot to plug that in.
You could have made 5 mistakes last week, but that's been narrowed down. You only get one chance.
And I fail.
Yeah, no, you did fine. Did fine.
So listen, let's remind everybody what we're doing this new thing on our website, right? So,
I forgot.
We started this. We're seeking feedback. We've been getting random messages through social media and from all angles about cool things or the thoughts that you guys have about the episodes that we've done of guests we've had. So we thought it would be a good idea to kind of put it all together, right? So go to our website, therolradio.com. There's a big button right on the front page. It'll take you right to the page where you can take a vote, essentially, right? Drop which episode, what was impactful about it, and once a month we'll draw a T-shirt. Actually, we'll give you a T-shirt, cool RŌL Radio T-shirts. Even the T-shirt is posted on this, so you can take a look at it. And so you desire, let us know, and we'll read all the some of the feedback that we've got, some of the comments on the show. I feel like I should let you talk.
You're talking a mile a minute, so
I know.
Maybe I can bring things down a little bit. Relax.
I'm excited.
Change the vibe here. Rules do apply, right? You got to live in the continental United States because we caught ourselves in a bad spot with that once before.
We love you guys overseas.
Yes, we do. But,
it is what it is.
Money talks. So.
This show is so professional.
And one thing I did want to mention real quick, competition 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Tons of people from RŌL. From the Academy here competed and did wonderfully. And we had, for the first time, a huge group of kids And it was really awesome to see all of them go out there and put it on the line. And it was, I was blown away. I went as a spectator and brought my kids. They weren't going to compete. 5 minutes after being there, I was coaching, and
you couldn't resist, could you?
No. Well, I had to tell my kids to go sit down and watch. But it was great. I was so happy.
I don't know if you remember, but there was this moment where I remember whose match it was, but I was about to go to compete, and you were like, "I got this," and you pushed me.
Coach?
You just pushed me aside.
Well, I had already coached their brothers, and I had already coached one of them earlier in the day. So when it came during gi, when it came to no gi, I was like, "Get out of here! I got this." But then I realized very shortly, because I don't do no gi, I'm strictly an old gi guy. I was like, "Oh no, I don't know. I don't know what to tell him. I don't know where to." So I guess I got to start doing no gi if I'm going to keep doing this.
Well,
for those guys.
here's a goal for you.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, you just
list.
committed, and for
I didn't commit to anything.
hundreds of thousands of listeners.
I guess is not a commitment. If I would have said I'm gonna do no gi, that's a commitment.
Now you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
Technicalities.
Absolutely. I'm good. I'm good at wiggling my way out of stuff. So,
But it was a good day. I do agree.
great.
It was very nice and refreshing to see a lot of the guys putting themselves on that. And there was tons of kids, which was one of the first times when we really had a collaborative effort from the Academy really to push it in that direction. And the response was amazing. I did not expect that kind of attendance and that kind of result. And it was fabulous. I loved it. It was great.
Wonderful.
It was great.
Really happy to be a part of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's bring Josh in. We have Josh McKinney on our show today. Josh, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
First things first, there's two things we need to talk about. First is congratulations. You recently, as of yesterday, you announced you're expecting, you will be a father. Congratulations. That's a really
Great.
really big step and a really big life-changing event. How do you feel about that?
Man, I didn't expect to talk about that today to start out.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
Honestly, my wife is 13 weeks pregnant right now. And at this point, we've known for about 9 weeks. And so at this point, at least I have not felt any other feeling but excitement yet. I'm sure it'll be like when you do a Jiu Jitsu competition, and as it gets closer, that excitement starts to maybe bounce back and forth with nervousness, but that hasn't happened to me yet. I really have just been really excited. It's been fun telling kind of my family and my friends. And so just been excited about it.
Well, good for you. Fatherhood is an amazing thing, and we are both fathers, and I can't speak for Gary, but my kids are nuts, but I love them to death. So
Yeah, your kids are nuts. You can speak for me.
Yes. Second thing I want to bring up is that we have a mutual passion for our producers.
Yes.
Isn't that?
Where would you be without us? Where would you be?
Go ahead.
This is something I expected to talk about to start the podcast, actually.
Let me have it. Let's hear it.
Listen, I do have to say that it's been a handful of times where I completely screwed up. Do you remember the time where I completely forgot to record the entire episode?
Yeah, so Thomas is a control freak, so there was a long period of time where he had to do everything. And on more than one occasion, halfway through an episode, on a couple of occasions halfway through or well into, you'd look over and be like, oh, we're not recording. Something's not recording, either the cameras, we do this over Zoom or on the board. And then there was one time early on.
Josh, let me frame this. 1.5 conversation.
Yeah.
One of the best conversations we had.
Uh-oh.
Like, we end the conversation. The next day, literally, like, we are about to edit files, and we are like, where are the files?
Yes.
Well, they should be here. They're not here. What the hell? Legit. Like, it just went over over my head.
Yes.
I'll take the hit.
I think
for
those
this.
were in the days we didn't even have a board yet.
That's
we were
true.
Just recording.
It
on
was
Zoom.
very
You never hit
it was
record
very
in the
amateur
meeting.
like. Yeah. Well, not that we are professionals, but I guess I don't know.
It was more amateur.
It was more amateur like.
For me right now, my producer and I were on pretty decent terms. Okay. But there are times in our relationship and our friendship. So, to put into context, we both compete at like adult. We do a lot of IBJJF stuff. He's a blue belt. I'm a black belt. And, you have general coach student stuff that goes on, but then you have producer, podcaster stuff that goes on too. So we get this dynamic relationship and we get to annoy each other more than basically anybody at the gym gets to annoy each other. Yeah, and so I really have, I can be tough to work with. I can be a little bit of a perfectionist with things and be a little unnecessarily hard on Bryce, my producer. But honestly, I think it builds character. I think it's the type of thing that, like, when you have a blue belt, if you want to be a black belt, you don't just learn to be a black belt. You get beat down and you change. You actually morph into a black belt through the crucible, And so that's kind of what I'm doing when I am verbally abusive to my producer. And he doesn't sit on the show. He just kind of sits in the corner during interviews. And so I'll just be insulting him and he'll have no way to respond, no way to talk back. I actually just gave him a mic that he can turn on and off whenever he wants. And so he just yesterday, recording an episode, he responded to harsh criticism for the first time. And I was like, I think I'm going to have to edit that out, man. I don't like you getting to talk back,
But you know what? I'm glad you say this because, I'm harsh on Gary, but up to this point, I felt bad about it. And right now, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to let it rip.
That's fine. I don't care.
I really think you're doing him a service. Like how
Gary?
Many people wish that they were getting abused by you, like on a daily basis and getting toughened up by you. It's an honor,
Zero.
But I'll tell you,
the only reason I'm in this seat is because I'm the only person that can put up with him. I'm going to guess I was the third or fourth or fifth choice to do this. And 3 or 4 or 5 people said, no, what are you, crazy? And I was the only one dumb enough. So you get what you deserve, I guess. And
but I totally get it. Like there's this dynamic, and I think Gary can. I can testify to this. Like there's this dynamic of instructor student. Like there's these like blurred lines there are never crossed. You know what I mean? Then Gary and I, we have this the dynamic of program manager and whatever. Owner of the business, right? The employee-employer dynamic. And then there is this playing field leveler, the podcast where the trash talking and shit talking
the only time
and everything's just fire back. So when he's frustrated, you can hear it on the show.
Yeah, especially in the takeaways when it's just the two of us and there's no guest, and I'm like, I'm really gonna let him have it. But I just noticed something else.
Yeah.
Again, so 3 different situations, and it's all me. So again, going back to what I just said, I'm the only one who's putting up with you. So keep that in mind.
Josh, how did this turn around against both of us, huh?
Listen, I'll tell you this. I've never had a problem in my life that wasn't Bryce's fault. That wasn't my producer's fault. I've never, even before I met him, it was so interesting meeting him because then I was like, oh, this is where the source of all of my turmoil has come from. Now it finally has a face. And so I can actually paint back the specific picture where, because Bryce was producing for me for a bit and things were great, but there was a specific moment where our relationship turned and I was like, oh, okay, Bryce only cares about himself. Oh. And it was this, we had just competed in Chicago and we were at one of my friend's gyms in Chicago, at Mark Vives' gym, New Breed. And so we're training really hard there. We're there for the competition training. And there's this one point in the training where we're doing 5-person groups. It's like 2 people in, and there's different people coming in throughout the round. You're doing really short rounds, but basically the goal is you have to win all 4 rounds in a row. And so the 2 students that I have with me are in my group, and then 2 other really tough guys from Mark's are in the group too. And I'm struggling. Bryce is the smallest guy. He's the youngest. He's the newest blue belt in the group. So he's taken a lot of beatings, right? But I can't get through, and I'm the most active competitor, the biggest in the group. I can't get through this group. The group is just too tough. And there's this point where I finally beat the 2 toughest guys in a row, and then I have Bryce next. And I'm like, Bryce, we're at my friend's gym. I'm trying to spread the gospel of jiu-jitsu here. I'm trying to look good. This is my chance. If I have an easy round with Bryce, I can rest. I can beat this last guy and I can make it through this horrible group. And what does Bryce do? He brings the heat. No respect for his coach at all. He throws up, there's only a 2-minute round. He throws up about 72 triangles in the 2-minute round, just over and over. And I lose the round. And ever since then, our relationship has been on the rocks. I haven't liked the guy ever since then.
The life will never be the same.
It was the point where the producer shines. That was.
You know what's my takeaway from all this? That we should bring Bryce on the show and get his perspective on all of this.
Yep.
He really.
Now that he's got a microphone.
Ooh, his perspective would be rough. You would have to delete my episode. People wouldn't listen to my episode if he told the stories about me that he has.
Let's do it. Something to consider. Something to consider.
It might be the move.
Josh, so aside from all this, you've been on the mat quite a bit. You have your own academy, obviously. You have your own podcast, which is such an interesting, I think, very eye-catching. And I do want to bring that up. I suck at jiu-jitsu. What were you thinking to come up with that name?
So for me, it was kind of a twofold thing. The first one was I liked the sound of the name and I wanted to do some sort of content creation. And I didn't know if it was Instagram videos or if it was a YouTube show or if it was something like that. But I really liked the name I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu. I just thought it was fun. And then kind of the second reason is I was right when I was starting the podcast, I had just gotten my black belt. I had finished brown belt and done really well at adult brown belt, like kind of on the whole scene. And I really thought I would do well at black belt. I knew I'd get a lot of opportunity. And so I really didn't want, though, to get painted as, oh, this is a show for black belt competitors or something like that. I really thought that I had much more to offer. And I kind of looked at the show's future past being a competitor, kind of the thing that I would really get to focus on and do after being a competitor. And so I just thought I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu would attract that audience that I wanted of people that term kind of rung with, and they go, oh yeah, I suck at jiu-jitsu too. I struggle on that drive home too. When after I got beat up by all the blue and purple belts at the gym or something like that. And I just think that, I don't know. I just thought it was a more approachable name, especially with how I could have easily painted myself in a corner by being a competitor or being a competitor's podcast.
So, but let me ask you that right off the bat. Do we suck at jiu-jitsu?
I do.
I mean, there is this, notion, or there is this thought often, and I think more often than not, that jiu-jitsu is hard, it's complicated, it's complex, it sucks. And often after a tough rounds, we go home on that ride home, whether it's half hour or 5 minutes, we are like, damn. And we see all the regrets, the whole list of things that we didn't do well. We often don't celebrate the successes, but we do bring up the things that didn't go according to plan. So do we all suck at jiu-jitsu?
I kind of got into, I think I've seen this from two different sides at this point. When I started jiu-jitsu, and I mean, there are still, don't get me wrong, there are times to this day that I will get out of a hard training session and my purple and brown belts just wrecked me. And I'm like, man, I've got to compete against the best guys in the world in 3 weeks. I suck. I'm not ready for this. And there is this, that is a mindset that I think could probably not be encouraged in the jiu-jitsu space and that be good. But it's a mindset that everybody kind of resonates with. It's something that I think we all kind of struggle with. But then the other side of it is eventually, if you do stay consistent and you do really work hard in on the mat, eventually you start to get good. You start to get good in the space that you're in. You start to be one of the guys that wins most of the rounds at the gym and doesn't lose. And I think that there can be the other side where those people start to go, oh, I don't suck anymore. I'm really good. And I really think that that mindset can start to keep you from going and trying to find tougher training, and keep you from going and testing yourself in competition, because you build this mindset that, well, I'm good. I can't do anything that will keep me from being good. And so I think that I suck mindset is something that everybody starts with, but then eventually in the future, when you start to become good, it can help you still not take yourself too seriously, which I really feel like is something that kind of stops growth in the jiu-jitsu space.
And that's the main reason why I ask, because I think it's an unquestionable fact that most students who start jiu-jitsu, especially the first year, sometimes even 2 years, the white belt, bracket or white belt time frame, we often say, oh my God, this sucks. It's hard. I can't figure this out. I get destroyed all the time. And then you talk to black belts. I mean, we've had over 100 black belts, on the 140 plus, right, at this point on the show. And every single one of them said, you will suck. It's going to be hard. This is complicated. You need to embrace the grind. Like all these phrases that everybody throws. And I know I do it all the time, like just have fun. Let it go. It'll get better. Just stick around. Don't quit. I mean, we can go on and on and on with all of these. But yet, so many students, especially at the beginning of that journey, get hung up on sucking and really not being good at it. So what is the good mental approach here, in your mind, to one, embrace the sucking, but two, is really to get out of that negative perspective and continue learning, or begin learning, I should say, as we continue going through this journey?
I think that the first battle for everybody in jiu-jitsu is the same. And you actually kind of spoke to it. I can tell you're a school owner and you deal with people that actually do have these mindsets of, man, I want to quit. I'm not doing well. Because the toughest thing when you first start is just finding consistency in jiu-jitsu, just being able to show up every Tuesday and Thursday that you said you would, or every Saturday, or whatever days that you're supposed to be training, and to be engaged during those times. And if you start to do that, that is like going to be, because I always get students that'll ask me, well, they're in all the time and they're going, well, did you see me do anything wrong? Did you see me do anything right? And I say, you're here. That's what I need you to focus on. First 6 months, I don't care, what else you're doing. You're going to get better just by being here, just by being engaged, just by being with the team, and just by training. But you have to be here. That is the most important mindset to start with, to me, is just that consistency mindset. But once you start to find your consistency and find the habits that help you, I really think that just making sure that you stay kind of searching for inspiration is the best mindset. And that's what, I guess this is a kind of a third way to look at it, but that's what I love about the I suck mindset is, maybe not just necessarily, maybe I suck is a little over the top to say, but when you think about your techniques, if you look at them as they're this perfect finished product, what will happen is you probably won't change them, and you probably won't update them, and you probably won't learn them deeper. But if you go, okay, there is still room for improvement in these techniques, in these concepts, and these ideas, what's going to happen is you are going to improve so much just because you know that there is more out there that you could be reaching towards. And so I think that that is really is that consistency, and then looking for inspiration is the mindset to me that seems to get people to wherever they want to go, whether it's self-defense, whether it's competition, whether it's just jiu-jitsu for health's sake. Those two things seem to be what matters to me. So
I think the first 6 months is probably the easiest to create the consistency. This is where things are fresh, right? It's like this hot first new thing, and it's like we making friends. The mental stimulation within the next first 6 months is so mind-blowing that people are so engaged. This is likely why people come in 3, 4, even 5 times a week. They're trying to maximize everything. But at some point, and it comes a different point for different people, but at some point, that consistency starts fading away. And it could be different reasons or different excuses or different, anchor points why this is happening. But at some point, we start fading away. And that 5 goes to 4, 3, that 2 goes to 1. I'm going to take a break. This is important and this and this and that. Why do you think that happens? Why do you think we cannot stay engaged with the same consistency for 5 years until that purple belt?
I really think for most people, it has to do with that they start to lose interest. Jiu-jitsu is so vast when you start, and then you start to learn it in a very specific way. Every school, I'm sure, teaches slightly different, and that teaches the technique slightly different, and everything slightly different. But you start to kind of learn that first layer of that school's style or flavor or what they teach or what they believe. And I think a lot of times that level of vastness, people stop with, okay, the first 6 months, they're going to learn the positions. They're going to learn the names of things. They're going to learn the grips. They're just going to come in and train hard. But after that, things are going to start to feel redundant. It's going to feel like, okay, well, we've worked side control before. I already know a move from side control. Why do I need to know a second move from side control? And I think so often people just lose inspiration. And I really think that doing things simply like listening to our conversation or just doing something else in the jiu-jitsu space that excites you and it motivates you to keep trying to learn, I think is the easiest way to never stop learning and to really keep consistent. So often you don't have consistency because you don't have any goals and you don't have any things that you're excited about. And so I think that a simple thing is like, you could schedule a competition as you start to lose that consistency. If you schedule a competition, it will motivate you to go out and compete. It'll motivate you to go out and train, right? If you decide you wanted to start a jiu-jitsu podcast, it will motivate you to train. It will motivate you to be involved in jiu-jitsu. And so I just think for most people, and that's why I said, consistency and inspiration, most people, they develop this consistency and then they have no inspiration, no goal, no drive after that. And then they go, well, there's this consistency that I've developed is useless. I could literally be doing anything else with this. And so I think just making sure that you're staying inspired and finding new things to be excited about is going to be really the main thing for staying consistent once you formed that habit.
Yeah, I call this being a fan, essentially, right? Whether you're listening to a podcast, watching videos, reading a book or biography, or shaking hands, going to seminars or going to the class or hanging out with your buddies, watching fights, whatever it is, you're being a fan. And the moment, at least, and I'm curious your thought on this, but I think it's not necessarily the fact of being in a class, but the moment you stop being a fan, this is where starts that decline. This is where you're getting bored. This is where jiu-jitsu is no more fun. This is where you're relying on these epiphanies on the mat, which sometimes they are difficult to come around because of the complexity what we are dealing with. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that even for myself, even now where I have 2 schools, I'm a competitor, I have a podcast, I do everything that I do kind of has to do with jiu-jitsu. But if I am not trying to get fed from anywhere else, meaning I'm not watching, there are certain YouTube channels that do jiu-jitsu stuff and it's more jiu-jitsu humor and I enjoy watching it. It may not even be teaching me something. It just keeps jiu-jitsu in my mind. And it's not something that I have to produce or I have to be the creator of, or even the training that I have to motivate myself in. It can just be something, like you said, fun, something that I'm a fan of. And I can just speak from that is helpful for me. Just having the podcasts I like to listen to, having the people that I like to conversate with about jiu-jitsu. I just lifted with some of my students today. And one of my favorite conversations I get to have every week is we lift and then we talk like 30, 45 minutes of jiu-jitsu after that. And it's very helpful for me. It's very inspiring for me. And they're my students. It's not like I'm learning from one of the best coaches in the world or something like that. I'm just hanging out with other people that love jiu-jitsu. And so, yeah, I can attest that is exactly right. If you stay a fan, you're able to just enjoy jiu-jitsu so much more. And if you enjoy jiu-jitsu more, you're going to be more consistent training, and you're going to find more excuses to train instead of find more excuses not to.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been very open about this with Gary on the show, but like this is how this show started. Pandemic hit, and like everybody's going through these struggles, and we were like, yo, let's talk to some people. And I would never take that back away from, like, I would never turn back. Like, I love the fact that we can have you and many others on the show and having a jiu-jitsu account. That's, for me, in a very selfish way, extremely engaging. Like, I would not be able to have a conversation with you. Like, I mean, who knows? Maybe we would meet on the Chicago Open or God knows where, but this is a very targeted conversation that we are having on specific topic. And now if you do that on a weekly basis, I mean, that's mind-blowing. What do you think about that? Because you're here too, even though, your role is very comprehended about pressing a red button.
I'm still heartbroken for Bryce. But what we were talking about at the very beginning here was like, I haven't been to a competition in a long time. And walking in yesterday, it was just the atmosphere, how fun it was. But more importantly, just seeing everybody coming together and helping each other out, and, running around to make sure that this kid had a coach or that adult had a coach. And then afterwards, all the messaging back and forth of, hey, you guys did amazing. Thanks for help. I appreciate this and that. Just kind of building that community again that I think so many people lost over the past couple of years, and, make it fun again, I think is the best way. You can get bogged down, man, getting beat up all the time, and you get discouraged, and, but if you going back a little bit, you're supposed to suck those first 6 months. I don't think you're not supposed to suck the second 6 months. You're gonna, if you're challenging yourself and going with people that are better and not getting complacent, so yeah, just find things to have fun with. Find techniques that are, or positions really that are fun for you, that are challenging, right? It still sucks to be down there and getting smashed, but, make it a challenge for yourself.
I had an interesting conversation with, I was part of a conversation this morning with a couple of my students, and one of them, but both of them white belts, but they've been training for a few months, and one of them says, I really was taking this so seriously at the beginning. And then I realized that if I'm so serious about it, I can't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I was not even a contributor to the conversation. I was just part of that dynamic there. And it hit me. And I was like, that right there is brilliance. That right there is that student, hit on something that I would say majority don't until later on. And it's so refreshing to see that there is more to it than the serious fact of learning or educating yourself or going through these struggles. Is like you actually seeking to have fun. You're seeking to get more out of this than just showing up and learning 2-3 moves or whatever the case is.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. That's the end of the show. No.
Next topic.
No. Go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say, just on that note of, how much fun jiu-jitsu could be. And on that note of me hating Bryce, it's just perfect. We could just a few weeks ago, we were at Pans, and I'm pretty sure Bryce was our first guy going that day. And me and one of the new blue belts were coaching him. We yell for him, and he looks pretty in control the whole match. He gets the finish. And, it's the first match for us at Pans that day. It was a really good match. And Bryce looked really on. He looked really good. And he just kind of walks away, walks back to the bullpen. And I look at Xavier, my student that was with me, and we both just have the biggest smiles on our faces. And I go, why is that? And he goes, what? I go, why do we feel this way in this situation? He goes, I don't know, but I love it. And Xavier had actually just flown from St. Louis to Orlando just to watch. And I was like, yeah, man, me too. Couldn't tell you anywhere else I'd rather be right now. And we weren't even competing. We were simply coaching one of the guys. And it was, and one of my least favorite guys at that. And it was really good.
Well, we know one person who's not listening to this show. Josh, I mean, you've done so many great things, and between your podcast and obviously your academy and motivating and training and competing, but the road is not always so smooth. I mean, today when somebody comes into your academy, they see a black belt who is accomplished, who is visible, who has a presentation of certain level, if you will, academy and online, right? But before we get to that point of quote unquote success, there has to be a beginning. All this has to start somewhere. And I often ask our guests, do you remember your very first day?
Oh, absolutely.
There has to be a story behind it.
Yeah, I remember my first day like it was yesterday. You guys just had on my coach, Kyle Watson.
Yes, we sure did.
So I've been under Kyle for 15 years. He was my first jiu-jitsu class I ever took, and I've been under him ever since. You guys got to meet him. You can see why. When I went into my first class, I was 14, and I was there because my mom made me go. I was overweight, and she just was like, hey, you need to do something. You're going to try jiu-jitsu. We were familiar with what jiu-jitsu was because of the UFC, and there is a new gym that gets built in my city. I live in a very small city, but by this crazy circumstance, Matt Hughes opens up one of the first ever super gyms in my town. And they invest a lot of money into it. It's called the Hit Squad, and Kyle is the head coach of jiu-jitsu there. I go into the first night. They don't have any kids program. And I was still, even though I was overweight, I was pretty short for my age. And my dad asked, hey, do you think he could try the class? The general manager said, maybe. It would be up to the coach. And Kyle just kind of looked me up and down, and he goes, you know what? We'll try it. And for me, I had no intention of doing jiu-jitsu. I had no intention of really doing anything. It really wasn't, not that I wasn't interested, but it wasn't something that was exciting for me. And I went into that first class, and I still remember we learned triangle to armbar back to triangle. And it was one of the most exciting, one of the most fun things I'd ever done. I got to roll with some of the guys afterwards. And I just remember getting off the mat, and I run to my dad, and he watched the whole thing. And I go, I want to do this every day. And my dad had a big smile on his face, and he said, I do too. And since then, we both have done it every day.
So hold on, rewind it a little bit. This is a great story, but I feel like there's more to all of this. So you, first of all, at which point you find out that you go into jiu-jitsu?
I bet you it was the day that I went to the first class.
What's your response? Like what's going through your mind? Because you make it clear that you don't want to go. This is not what you want to do.
It's the same response that I have to this day when my wife says, hey, we have to do ... We have to go somewhere, right? Anything
you just connected with thousands of guys,
right? Anything that involves leaving my house, that was the response. I was like, man, I don't want to do this. I have no desire to do this. Mom, I've just done swimming lessons, and I've done tennis, and I've played basketball, and I hated all those things like I anticipated, but I followed through with them and whatever. I don't want to do this.
So are you hesitant, meaning like you really don't want to go, or you just annoyed with the idea?
I just don't want to do anything new. I don't think I was super nervous about the situation. I just didn't want to try anything new. I was fine being a 14-year-old and playing video games and doing nothing. And, I think that my mom really saw the need for me to have some type of passion of something. and just something healthy for me too. And yeah, I mean, if you met my mom, and you understand, my mom is she has this nonprofit. It's been around for 20 years. They just celebrated $1.2 million total donated to helping people in other countries through this nonprofit. And I was doing an interview actually about it, and I was talking about this thing that I help with, and they were like, how did you get involved? And I was like, the same reason that all my friends from high school are involved in this nonprofit too, and everybody I've ever met is involved. My mom just tells you that you're gonna do things. And so for like my friends, when I say, yeah, my mom just made me go when I was like 14, they all get it. They're like, yeah, I get how she would just make you do something like that.
I have a feeling that our month of May is filling up. We have Bryce lined up. We have your mom lined up. Like this is going places right now. But listen, okay. So your mom makes you go. You there is a point of hesitance, just not even about jiu-jitsu, but fundamentally getting out of the house. Like you don't want to try new things. You get there, and if I'm thinking about the place that you are referring to, and I'm not, I think it is, that place is not small. This is
no.
You're talking about a huge facility with Matt Hughes. Do you know who Matt Hughes is? Like, are you even following UFC at that point?
So we know, yeah. We actually would watch the UFC like once a month, however often they had events. We would order the pay-per-view all the time and had for years. We even owned a lot of Gracie self-defense tapes. We had done jiu-jitsu in our garage or grappling in our garage for periods of time. We weren't doing it at that time, but just when I was younger, we were just very big UFC fans, and kind of everything that went along with that early on. And so my dad had even done maybe like 6 months, like once a week of jiu-jitsu in a different place in probably 30, 45 minutes away from our house. It was just kind of too far, and he just didn't stick with it. But yeah, at this point, that's gym is called the Hit Squad. It was enormous. It was the biggest gym at the time. I had like 3,500 square feet of mats, had boxing rings. It had the latest and greatest equipment of everything. It really was a pretty intimidating place.
So you walk into the facility, your parents are talking to the GM, maybe he can try the class, the coach says, the instructor says, yeah, let's give it a shot. What's going through your mind? Is the hesitance going away at this point? Are you gaining interest here yet or not yet?
I think immediately I'm starting to gain interest. I walk in, and that was the cool thing about the Hit Squad it had about a 3-year period. It stayed open for longer than that, but it had about a probably 3 or 4 year period that it was the place. I mean, in the Midwest, it was such a cool place to go to. And it was literally like 5 minutes from my house. And so that first class you walk into, Matt Hughes and Robbie Lawler are on the mat training. And like, I'm just looking out at the mat, and these guys are, they're just grappling. Mark Fiore's coaching the class. I don't realize at the time, but like my coach is in the class, taking the class too. And there's like the pro MMA class. And so, crazy environment, but I think more excited than intimidated, because I was just a little kid, and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. This is really cool.
So class starts, you go through the class, at which point you are drooling all over this? At which point you are hooked? Because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but like I know for me that there was a moment in my first class when I was like, I'm done. Like I'm hooked. Like you're dragging me out of this place. I so want to do this. Did you have similar moments?
Yes, absolutely. I've always been a very hands-on person. And still am to this day. It's just way easier for me to learn something if I can mess with it. And I really grasped the techniques that Kyle was showing very quickly. And I think that kind of made him go, okay, this kid will be fine in this class. And so he let me roll at the end. And it was just like one round. And it was with one of the older guys that was also smaller, also pretty new. And I went with him. And from those Gracie tapes, I knew a Kimura, and I hadn't, trained that yet. And his hand was on the mat and I was in closed guard. And I was like, I think I could do that here. And I hit him with a Kimura and tapped him with it. And it was one of those things of like, whoa, that was awesome. That was the most fun thing. Like, I've shot a ball into a basket and I didn't feel this way. Why do I feel this way? And that was when after that round was when I went over to my dad and said, I want to do this forever.
And here we are. How many years later? This is 15 years?
15 years later, yeah.
15 years later. Isn't it amazing how one day can literally change the trajectory of your life, completely taken in a different direction? Have you ever thought about what your life would look like if that day didn't occur, if your mom didn't make you go to jiu-jitsu?
I literally cannot guess. I mean, if you look at it, I have done more jiu-jitsu alive than I was alive without jiu-jitsu. I'm 29 now. I was 14 when I walked in. I've done jiu-jitsu for 15 years. And at this point, every relationship that I really have that is close and meaningful to me, kind of came some way or another through jiu-jitsu, through the travel of jiu-jitsu, through meeting other people through jiu-jitsu. And so, yeah, it's just, I mean, it really is impossible for me to speculate what I would be doing or who I even would be if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu.
Let me ask you this question. We asked this a couple of times in the past, but if somebody wrote you a check, a blank check, you can put any amount, doesn't matter. But in return, you are forgetting everything jiu-jitsu relating. It's gone. It just snaps and it's gone. Everything from your relationship to the knowledge you have, jiu-jitsu's completely disappeared from your life. You are who you are right now. Would you do it, yes or no?
No way. Absolutely not. It would not even cross my mind to say yes. The only reason I would want a blank check is so I could do more jiu-jitsu. And so, and do jiu-jitsu in cooler places and stuff like that. And then if you take my jiu-jitsu knowledge away, yeah, I'm not trading that.
You wouldn't know Bryce.
You know what? I'm taking the check. Give me the check.
I'll write it right now. Yeah.
Everything comes back to Bryce. Look at that.
I'm going to have to text him before this one comes out. I usually will just talk bad about him and then put it on the podcast. Yeah. And then he'll be like, oh, man, I was listening today. I got to warn him about this one.
Yeah, we got to cut up some clips.
That'll be my soundbite.
So 15 years later, you're still on the mat, obviously successful. This is what you do for a living now, right? So it's not only a hobby, this is not only a passion, but this is your livelihood, right? You starting a family. First of all, let me derail this further. What does your wife think about this? Does she think you're crazy?
So I am fortunate enough to have been with my wife since I was 17. And so we've been together, 12 years now. Mm-hmm. And so she has been around jiu-jitsu I'd only been doing jiu-jitsu for 3 years when we first got together. And so she's been around it for so long, and it's been such a big part of of my life. And then she has always, I think a big reason for me when I was young of why we stayed together so long is she was always encouraging of me going out and trying to compete and trying to grow, even though when you're 17 and 18 years old and your early 20-year-old husband our boyfriend doesn't want to go to college and doesn't want to do anything that you were quote unquote supposed to do. And all he wants to do is chase after this martial art that he swears there could be money in one day, probably. It was really trusting of her. And then since then, we've actually, that's paid off some, and so we're at a point now where her and I, she still does cosmetology, but she does it 3 days a week. And then the rest of the time she's helping me with the gym. And she actually, at this point, I really teach at the gym and she really runs the gym. And so, yeah, she's very supportive of it, very helpful to it.
Well, first of all, good for you and congratulations to both of you on such a great dynamic and from a business perspective and obviously from your passion. But at the same time, I do have to ask you, many people do dream about being in a position like yours. You know, one, having an academy, two, maybe doing jiu-jitsu professionally, maybe not owning one, but teaching maybe. It's not a secret that running professional jiu-jitsu academy is difficult. It's hard. Running it as a business and truly making a living on it, it's not so easy. There's not many. There's a lot of them, but if you look at percentage-wise to academies, they are professionally ran versus clubs, quote unquote, there's a big difference between those. First of all, did you know that that's what you want to do for a living from the beginning on?
Probably 2 months in, I knew that.
Really?
I did. I knew. So to put into context, my dad has had personal training studios my whole life. That has been his primary source of income my whole life. And he's very similar. I guess I'm very similar to him in a sense that I just didn't do well working for people. He didn't do well working for people either.
Yeah.
And it was more important to him to chase his passion and try to make money living his passion. And that was just something that he really taught me. And once I found a passion, I thought that was normal. I thought that, I'm going to do this until I can open a school. Yeah. And then I'll have a school.
It definitely takes a special breed to own a business. And, you know, I think even, you know, magnifying that to really have an academy, jiu-jitsu academy, you know, from a business perspective. What do you think is the one thing that separates the success versus the club-like environment for the ones who do want to venture into that area?
Man, I really feel like one of the biggest things, if I was just going like one thing, has to be your ability to consistently bring in not even new members, just new people to try class. And that doesn't necessarily mean advertising, like somebody paying for advertising or something like that. But, and this is just my theory behind it, is if you get 3 to 5 chances at new students every single month, and you are good enough to keep like your retention rate positive, you know, and you are focused on running your school well enough to keep your retention rate positive from there, I really think that no matter what end goal you have for your academy, you'll get there eventually. And you'll get there with people that want to be there with you for a long time. And so that, like, you know, whatever, 3 to some academies are huge and they need 20 new people walking through the door. But if you can do that, I think you can do the one business thing that most jiu-jitsu businesses don't do very well. And that is, you know, get enough demand for it, get enough chances. You see so many schools that struggle in that, like, kind of where you're talking about, that club range, that kind of probably under 60 students. And you see a lot of them in probably even closer, like under 30 students. You see a lot of places struggle in those areas because you're just making enough to get by. So then all your time is focused on probably your other job or the other business that you have to run. And so I really think if you just had a consistent means to bring in 3 to 10 people every single month, no matter what, it would solve all those other problems, because you would start to break that 30 to 60 student barrier. You would start to make enough money to be able to hopefully get yourself some free time out of whatever else you have to do and focus on your business. And I really think that is the one thing that I see most academies struggle with. And the one thing that academies don't struggle, they always seem to have, is that little, that flywheel that is just spun by a few new people coming in and trying jiu-jitsu every single month.
Do you think that at some point, or maybe already is, jiu-jitsu could be a professional job, professional sport for almost anybody who wants to do it? And I don't only mean as an instructor. I'm talking about point of employment, point of, a business where, we can really provide value on and off the mat.
Man, I see so much growth to just the sport, the art in general lately. Just so many new people willing to try it, and so it growing so much. And so to me, I don't think that every single human being would be able to open a jiu-jitsu school, like you said, but there are so many other avenues that there are in the jiu-jitsu space to kind of make a living. And so, I coming up through competition and getting to compete alongside or compete against so many different people that when we were young and we were purple belts and brown belts, they lived out of their cars, and then they ran the support of some jiu-jitsu clothing company, like for a few hours each day, or they did video editing for a jiu-jitsu school a few hours each day. You see so many people do things like that. And you just see also people doing what we're doing. We're both podcasters, just in that content creation space. I always will ask my friends, like, okay, how many people do you know that create content? And a lot of times they'll go, you. And I go, okay, how many people do you know that consume content? And they'll go, everybody that I know. I'm like, yeah, so there is a discrepancy there. And I think that discrepancy is going to be in the jiu-jitsu space too. And I think if people learn to brand themselves, they could not have any real jiu-jitsu business minus, whatever they wanted to sell or whatever service that they have. They don't need a brick and mortar business. I really do think that there's a low barrier of entry, and that barrier of entry is just how you brand yourself. At least in jiu-jitsu right now. That could change. It could be a point where there just needs to be more school, and the opportunity for schools is the biggest thing. But to me, that's not the biggest thing because of what I just said. Most schools struggle bringing in new people anyway. Until that's solved like everywhere, and jiu-jitsu is like going to the grocery store. I don't think that that opportunity for everyone to be a school owner is really going to be viable. But I do think that there's opportunity online somewhere or another for everyone that would like to dedicate time to make money through jiu-jitsu.
Do you think that jiu-jitsu has become more than just on the mat techniques and learning? And what I mean by that, when I look back, 20 years ago when I was starting, jiu-jitsu was literally at the academy. There was nothing else. Like there was no YouTube. There was no videos. There was no DVDs. Gracie in Action. That's like the only DVD I remember. But there were books. It was very narrow. Today, you have podcasts, you have videos, you have BJJ Fanatics, you have all these platforms, you have, you have Instagram content, video or on YouTube. There's so many different opportunities. Do you think that in order for one to be an effective Jiu-Jitsu Academy owner, they have to venture into some of the other areas? Or is there a possibility to have Jiu-Jitsu Academy on its own and just be the instructor that we used to be, 15, 20 years ago? In other words, making this shorter, is all this content creation necessary for Jiu-Jitsu to be successful? I guess I should have asked that. You see, this is like the foreign guy over here. Yeah, it's just,
Man, that's a good question. I just think that the world is always changing, right? There's always something new. There's always a new thing that you could adapt and you could grow in. And I always kind of think that jiu-jitsu is a lot smarter than I am, and jiu-jitsu is a lot bigger than I am. And so a lot of times I think that it's going to just consume things like the internet. It's going to use things like the internet so well. And it's going to use things like podcasts so well. And I think there's so much opportunity. I definitely do, kind of to the original question, I definitely do think that there is a place for instructors that don't have podcasts and don't have other things. But I do think that the future is still probably online for most things, and literally having your academy also online for people to be able to watch videos and to be able to consume the teaching at your academy. Because like, I guess if you're a coach that views your teaching as that important, you should probably make sure that teaching is not just for everybody who is there Monday night on the 16th. Make sure that it's also there for people who weren't able to make that class. And so I do think that to an extent, everything jiu-jitsu, everything that we do is going to have something to do with being online at some point or another, right? And it almost just has to with the way the world is going. But I also do think that there is definitely a place for the local school owner, and there always will be. I mean, I think that if people got to really understand how small of a community I live in and how low income of an area my school is, quote unquote, successful in, I think it would really shock a lot of people and make them go, oh, wow, I could definitely have a jiu-jitsu school in my area if I did the right things.
Yeah, it's you bring up really good points. I don't think anything will ever replace the physical engagement that jiu-jitsu provides at the academy. Like, you can watch as many videos as you want, listen to podcasts, read books, and be the smartest dude in the planet. If you're not stepping on the mat, you're not learning jiu-jitsu. It is what it is. At the same time, the other side of the coin is, if you are engaged in the online presence, whatever that means to you, but if you are engaged in that factor, it will not only raise the value for the students, to in some way will document and create this quote unquote legacy factor, right? I mean, if the conversations are recorded or the videos are being shot and whatever, at 10 years from now, that content will still be there as long as it's available, and more people can benefit from it. And again, not to plug BJJ Fanatics, but I think that's one of the brilliant things that they've done, is bring everybody in one place and give everybody the opportunity to pick and choose who you want to learn from. I mean, nobody has ever done to the capacity that they have done up to this point. But all this is going to continue evolving. But we can't forget the simple fact: we still got to show up to the academy. You still got to get back on the mat. You still got to grind it. You still got to get tapped out. You still got to suck at jiu-jitsu. Look at that.
Wow. You do.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at it. I brought it all back in. Look at that. Look at that. That was good.
I'm proud of you today.
Hey, listen. Brought it back in. Look at that. Yeah. Look at that. How was Bryce doing, by the way?
Oh, I'm sure he's out just throwing kittens into a river or something. I'm sure he's doing something evil, for sure.
Creating more problems,
writing bad reviews of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show somewhere.
Is that what it is?
That just gave me some
anything to
inspiration.
spite me, he's doing.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Good for him.
Josh, listen, we've been at this for a while. At the end of every episode, what we do is we have a question from our previous guest. But as they were asking that question, they didn't know you will be answering that. So essentially think of it as a question in blind. Gary will ask you the question. That generates always interesting to end of the conversation, but always it's a fun end of the show.
Yeah.
I like it.
So this is from Maggie Grindatti. And her question is, do you think it is important as a gym owner to also teach classes?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Tough question.
She recently opened her own gym, and it's interesting, and it's so fitting because you do run and you do compete.
Now, she did not open a jiu-jitsu gym.
Right. She has a fitness, which is even different dynamic. Yeah.
So I really think it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you look at, with a jiu-jitsu school, it really is so it's so intimate with the coach. That's just such a normal, but the coach doesn't necessarily have to be the owner. I can have other coaches, in like an hour, my kids coach is going to run the kids class, and I don't teach any kids classes, and our kids program does really well, right? But something that the owner tends to have to do, and again, I don't want to just blanket this, but for me, is be involved at the gym, whether that means I'm teaching classes or whether it means I'm just there and having individual conversations. And I think that that's just kind of, for me, thinking as a head coach, I just like to make sure that all of my individuals are heading in the right direction. And so I really don't think that, I guess my short answer is no, I don't think that you have to, but I do think that for what a lot of people are going for, or what a lot of people are trying to accomplish in their schools or in their gyms, whatever type of business that they are running, I do think you do have to have some involvement and some engagement with your clients and with your people, however you may accomplish that.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate part, that often, and this is not jiu-jitsu necessarily related, but business, being an entrepreneur, that I think the growth is part of the path that we are all seeking. We want to be at the point where the business is self-sufficient, self-running almost, and there's you can employ people who can run the business, but the trade-off is if we become completely disengaged, then one, the personal connection is lost. Often that business takes different directions, and oftentimes that's the first step towards the disaster. And, with very personal and community-driven businesses like Jiu-Jitsu Community, that's extremely impactful and visible extremely fast. I've seen that happen, unfortunately, firsthand with other academies. And I don't wish that on anybody. So success in that direction is not necessarily what we want to achieve. That presence of the instructor, especially the owner and the head instructor, is so important, critical.
Yep, totally agree. I think that for what I want to accomplish at my gym, I notice when I am not present, I seem to get further away from those goals and from that community and stuff. But when I am present, it's very easy to get towards those goals and have that community. Because like I said, it's me, a lot of what makes the gym successful is me getting to have it, maybe not business wise successful, but for the other things that I care about, for the competitive stuff and just for the community aspect of the gym. It is a lot of times me having the right conversations with all of the right individuals to make sure that they're doing good and that they have goals that they're trying to accomplish and things that they're trying to hit. And then it just so happens that we all kind of go in the right direction together. And so, and if I'm sure that is probably a job that you could have, you could also hire out to do. You could have somebody that does that, but that is a job that's very important, I think, for so many school owners who kind of tie a lot of their identity to their school. I don't think that that's a job that you would want to probably hire out. Long answer to Maggie's question. And it's funny because she is obviously so much more qualified to answer the question than I was. So that was
well, what I got out of this, that you take vacation and Bryce just destroys your academy. That's what I heard.
Everything going.
I wouldn't have a school if Bryce got to be in charge at the school. There is no way that I would have a school if Bryce was in charge.
Man, I got to talk to Bryce. I don't care how he is. I want to meet that guy.
I'll let him know. I'll let him know you guys will be contacting him.
Oh, Josh, what a phenomenal conversation. Well over an hour. My apologies for stretching this out. But
no, it was great. I had a blast.
If anybody, for whatever reason, has been living under the rock, how can people find you? How can they connect with you? Talk about your podcast. That's a big platform that's very powerful for anybody who is doing actively in jiu-jitsu. Talk about all this. Please.
All right. So first up, the thing that I really do that isn't my school, that I put, isn't my team, that I put as much time as I can into is my podcast. And that's the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. It is on YouTube and it's anywhere else you may listen to a podcast. And I release 2 episodes a week now. The Tuesday episode is an interview. It's a fun conversation with somebody that I like, that I think would be helpful on whatever space. Obviously, you guys are familiar with what an interview is if you're listening to this. But then every Thursday, I release a solo episode where I just talk about maybe a specific training method, a training idea, something that people struggle with. And that's probably, I always explain it like it's closer to if the Bill Burr Monday Morning podcast was a jiu-jitsu podcast. And so sometimes it's just me complaining about Bryce for long periods of time. But it's a fun listen. And so those are my two main things that I do. You can follow me on Instagram at the Josh McKinney. I'm not the best at responding to things on Instagram, but I also always joke, I like to live in 2007, and I have an email address that you can email, josh@simplifyingjujitsu.com. And I will kind of answer any questions that anyone has. If anyone ever had podcast suggestions, anything like that, or they just listened to this episode and they were like, please never come back on RŌL Radio. You ruined my day by being there. Please, I support Bryce, something like that. They could send me an email on that, but that's pretty much it.
Well, phenomenal. If you have never listened to Josh's episode or Josh's show, I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu, I encourage you to do it. And we'll post all the links in the show notes as we always do. So feel free to follow, feel free to tag along and listen and do all the fun stuff. All the support is needed and, good content. Why not? Gary?
Yeah, thanks for being on with us. Congratulations on the baby. I hope it's a boy and you name it Bryce.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And no, it's great. Oh, there was something I wanted to ask a long time ago. Your dad's still doing jiu-jitsu. What rank is he?
He is also a black belt. He's also a first degree black belt.
Nice. That's awesome. Who was it Kyle that promoted him to black belt as well?
Kyle is our coach. And for your next question, my dad did get his black belt 6 months before me.
Oh,
he did beat me on it.
Nice. Good for him.
Yeah, he probably won't let that one go. Yeah.
Yeah, he brings it up all the time. He makes me call him professor.
Yes. At this point, I feel like we should have your entire family on the show. Your mom, your dad, your wife should tag along too.
Yes.
And then Bryce as a kind of cap up on all this.
I've got a lot of good people in the jiu-jitsu space that you guys just let me know. I'll send whoever you want.
I see a reality show in your future.
That might be true.
Josh, thank you for hanging out with us. We'll be, as always, watching from the sidelines as your success continues growing, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.